make sure it's you tonight, okay?
Yeah,
I have things to talk to you about later.
Understood.
Okay? There was a lot of undercurrent that was not 100% clear. Alright, but we'll talk about that. That's why we're here to hear you tonight. And tomorrow. Alright?
Alright. No, you're on now.
I'm in?
Yeah. I'll give you the second latest one. I'll give you the latest one. So,
Alright.
page 34 in your supplement.
Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are over and over again. Return again, return again, return again. Return again, return again, return again, return again, turn to the land of your soul.
Shabbat Shalom. Gamar Tov. May you be written in the book of life. This is that tightrope of Jewish observance, that balancing act. On the one hand, it's Shabbat, the day of joy and celebration. On the other hand, it's Yom HaKippurim, the day of atonement, the day in which we are obligated by the Holy One, by our tradition, to really concentrate on the most significant, most important aspects of who and what we are. To consider the ways in which we must reach out to forgive others. The way we must ask for forgiveness. It's going to preoccupy us all through these next 24 and a half hours. We will focus on the notion that our lives are finite and that we have only so much time to get this right, to put ourselves right, to find the balance point that we might say, I understand how I was and how I was not, and I understand who I can be tomorrow that will be better. As a famous teacher once said, there is no try. There is only do or do not. What will we do? That is the challenge. Keep the try to yourself. What's the do? What's the foundation upon which you will stand to declare yourself? That's the challenge. That's why this day is not simple. That's why we don't do it privately in our homes. We do it together with people we've known and loved, people we've never met before. We have a similar goal in mind. With our voices joined together, it gives us strength, gives us a fighting chance to find the courage to declare who and what we are, what we believe, what we're willing to do. It is the tradition of Yom Kippur that on this night, only this night, we are engaged to wear our talesim. If you're wearing a talit tonight, would you please stand up? For those of you who are sitting in the congregation, I suggested at Rosh Hashanah last week to close your eyes and listen to the sound of talises going on. And whether it's the wings of the Shekhinah, the great holy presence, whether it's the sound of devotion, or to keep your eyes open and imagine this great cloud of holiness rising above our heads is a good omen. However you want to read that or experience it, it's a good thing. Ribono Shel Olam, creator of the universe, on this Kol Nidre we stand before you. We pry open our hearts to walk through this narrow passage to get to the other side, and on that other side, find you. Find our loved ones, find our friends, find our neshama, our soul, ready to do your will with a new and fresh and glorious sense of your presence and the presence of those around us. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lihitatef b'tzitzit. It's an honor to invite our president, Ella Meisel, along with her daughters, Ali and Carly, to bless our Shabbat and Yom Kippurim candles. We continue in our Machzor on page 250. To the bottom of the page, there's a meditation I invite you to read silently.
Tzadik, Uyishri lev simcha. Urzaru latzadik, Uyishri lev simcha. Urzaru latzadik, Uyishri lev simcha.
ark openers for this moment of Kol Nidre are Neil Jacobs and Debbie Posen. Our Torah holders, Stacy Schwartz, Abby Shapiro, Paul Cohen, and Roger Kaufman. If you'd please join us. If the congregation would please rise. Turn to page 251. Bishiva shel mala, Vishiva shel mata, al dat hamakom, al dat hakahal, anu matirin, lid palel, ima avarianim. In the sight of God and of all the congregation, no matter how far some of us may have transgressed by departing from our people and our heritage, we pray as one on this night of repentance. Kol Nidre, a whisper of wings, as promises are remembered, saint and sinner alike communes with the Most High. We are at one. Heart of all life, from this day of atonement to the next, may we reach it in peace. All Israel makes these vows to turn from sin and wrongdoing and to walk in the way of your law, the path of justice and right. Yet we know our weakness, how prone we are to fail. Help us to keep these vows made with contrite hearts. We have come to seek pardon and forgiveness.
Kol Nidre v'yasarei v'charomei v'konamei v'chinuyei v'kinusei v'kinusei u'shevuot. Kol Nidre v'yasarei v'charomei v'konamei v'chinuyei v'kinusei v'kinusei u'shevuot. Tindana, udishtabana. התאסרנה על נפשתנו מיום כיפורים זה עד יום כיפורים הבא עלינו לטובה כל הון יחרדנה והון כל הון יהון שרון כל הון יהון שרון יהון שרון שוויקין שוויתין בטלין ומבוטלין בטלין ומבוטלין לא שרירין ולא קיימין נדרנה לא נדרה וסרנה לסרי ושבועתנה ושבועתנה לשבועות
ונסלח לכל עדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם, כי לכל העם בשגגה. Knowingly or not, the whole community of Israel and all who live among them have sinned. Let them be forgiven. As in your love, you've been patient with this people from the time you led us out of Egypt to the present day, so in your great love, may you forgive your people now. And God said, I've pardoned in response to your plea. Ruler of the universe, for giving us life, for sustaining us, for enabling us to reach this season.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'ehyanu v'kiyamanu v'higyanu lazman hazeh.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. We read together from the bottom of 253. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim v'chokhma poteach she'arim uvidvuna mishane itim umachalif et hazmanim umsader et hakochavim b'mishmaroteim barakia kirtzono borei yom v'layla kolel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or ma'avir yom mevi layla ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבי.
אהבת
עולם בית ישראל, אהבת תורה מצוות חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך, לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו באורך ימינו, ובהם נגן יומם ולילה.
ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני,
שמו.
אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד.
Please be seated. On 255.
ואהבת
את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך
היום
על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, ושבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. Chaim of Tzantz, the great 19th century Hasidic master, tells a story. He says, one day a man went out into the woods, lost his bearings, and night was falling. He was terrified. No sense of direction, no idea what to do. His heart was sinking. And then he heard a sound of something in the woods, and he was very afraid. But then he looks and sees it's someone, it's another guy, and he's walking towards him, and his heart just lifts, and he's so relieved. And he runs over to him and he embraces this stranger. He says, "Oi, thank God I found you, because I have no idea how to get out of here." The man looked at him and he said, "I was thinking the same thing. He said, I am totally lost." He said, "But one thing is clear. the way I was looking was not the right way, and the way you were looking was not the right way. If we join forces, maybe we get out of here together. Mi Chamocha is on page 257.
Mi
Kamocha va'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nidar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osef eleh,
malchutecha ra'u vanecha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe uMiriam, Zeli anu v'amru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. V'ne'emar ki fad Adonai et Yaakov ugalo yad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael.
Page 258.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom, V'hamidenu Shomreinu Lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom, V'hamidenu Shomreinu Lechaim. Ushmar tzidkenu, uvoenu, lechaim u'shalom, be'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom, V'hamidenu Shomreinu Lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom, V'hamidenu Shomreinu Lechaim.
It's Shabbat. It's the Szechuan part of our book. We continue the bottom of page 258 in the red.
V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם, ברית עולם, ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת, שבת.
Tonight there are folks who are not with us because they are unable to leave their homes because of sickness, perhaps because they're taking care of someone who is ill. They can't be with us. And while we hope they're joining us with our streaming and they're part of our congregation, our virtual congregation, we're aware of the fact, those of us who would normally have them by our side, we're aware of the fact that they are missing. And we're aware of the fact also that by standing by those we love, that we care about, who are ill, we bring them the sense of our presence and our blessing to them. And we know that we sing Misha Berach, prayer that we pass on to those who we know and love, strangers among us, that they might have courage, that they might have faith, that our blessing might bring to them the renewal of spirit, the renewal of body. We don't have the power of healing, but we do have the power of blessing. Our custom on Shabbat is to invite individuals to raise their hands, to say the names aloud of those who you are thinking about who are ill. Even the size of our congregation tonight on this Shabbat, on this Kol Nidre, I ask in a moment that we speak their names out loud together. And as I often said, even though to us it will sound like a jumble of names, God will pick each one out one by one. And so if you'll please say those names now. On page 38 in the supplement.
Yitgadal, Yitgadal, Shmir Abba, Be'alma Divrach Hirtei, V'yamlech Malchutei, B'chayechon, U'v'yomechon, U'v'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'bisman kariv yimaru.
Amen.
Yehi Shemei Rabba Mevorach, Le'olam u'lamei almaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה. לעילה ולעילה, מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תוש ברכתה ונפלת, דמירן בעלמא, ויאמרו אמן.
We continue on page 260. Please rise.
Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, Elohei Rachel, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanara, Elayon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher, Chastei Avot v'Imahot, U'Mevi Geula Lifnei B'neihem, Leman Shemo V'Ahava. Zochreinu lemayim, melech hatzvachayim, v'chotveinu b'sefer hachayim, lema'anecha Elohim chayim, melech hazer Mashiach Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah.
Amen.
Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye hakol atah, Rav le'Hoshia, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim הקדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללו חסלה. קדוש אתה ונורא שמך, ואין אלוהי מלבדך, ככתוב, ויקבע אדוני צבאות במשפט, האל הקדוש נקדש בצדקה. ברוך אתה אדוני המלך הקדוש.
Please be seated. We continue silently.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim leolam, Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Ki ata hu melech Adon lechol hashalom. B'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. בטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Join me. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim leolam, Tasim leolam, Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Ki ata hu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Baruch atah Adonai hamvorech et amo Yisrael bashalom, bashalom, bashalom. בספר חיים מרחה בשלום ופרנסה טובה, ניזכר וניחתים Shalom.
We don't generally talk about sinning as postmodern Jews. If we say the word sin, it sounds like it belongs to some other religion. We don't do the sin thing. But then we come to Yom Kippur and we're reminded, with the subtlety of a 2x4 applied to our heads, that in fact, sin is very much a part of our conversation. We define sin as the ways in which we miss the mark. We don't get it. We aren't listening. We're not feeling. We're not paying attention. We get avaricious. We lose our patience. Irritable. We feel defensive. No one really understands us. And so we sin. It doesn't mean we're immutably horrible. It means we must do better. Not try, but to do better. And that's why we do this vidui, this confessional, a few different times during Yom Kippur. You wonder why the tradition is, after we do a shamna, we bit our breaths. We do this, after each one. And actually, if you really look back into early pre-modern history, before the Canaanites used to actually flagellate themselves. We've gotten beyond that part. That's the good news. But this sort of is still part of that. The Hasidim say, no, they don't, because they're not really interested in studying history. What they're interested in is the neshama, the spirit, and they say, this is to keep doing it until you feel it. Sort of pound it into you. Oh, now I get it. There's another tradition, it's called syllable slapping. Now I get it. That's why we do this. To remind ourselves of not only our humanness, but our frailty. And that frailty, the obligation to do better. It's no one else's obligation but our own. Please turn to page 269 and rise. We read together. Our God, God of our mothers and fathers, grant that our prayers may reach you. Do not be deaf to our pleas, for we are not so arrogant and stiff-necked as to say before you, our God and God of all ages, we are perfect and have not sinned. Rather do we confess, we have gone astray, we have sinned, we have transgressed.
Eloheinu ve'Eloi Avotenu, tavo lefanecha, tfilateinu, ve'al v'titala mitchinateinu, הזפנים וקשי עורף למעלה.
Ashamnu,
Ashamnu,
Bagadnu,
Bagadnu,
Gazalnu,
Gazalnu,
Dibarnu Dofi,
Dibarnu Dofi. Ay, 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 la, 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 la.
Hevinu,
Hevinu,
Vehirshanu,
Vehirshanu,
Zadnu,
Sadnu,
Hamasnu,
Hamasnu,
Tafalnu Shaker,
Tafanu Shaker. Ay,
Ay,
ay, ay, ay, ay, ay, ay, ay, ay, ay, ay.
Yatsnura,
Ye'atnura,
Kizavnu,
Kizavnu,
Latsnu,
Latsnu,
Maradnu,
Maradnu,
Niatsnu.
Niyatsnu.
Ay, 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 Sararnu,
Sararnu,
Avinu,
Avinu,
Pashanu,
Pashan,
Sararnu,
Saranu,
Pishinu Oref.
Kishinu Oref.
Ay, 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 la, 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 Rashanu,
Rashanu,
Shichatnu,
Shechadnu,
Tiavnu,
Tiavnu,
Ta'inu,
Tahinu,
Titanu.
Titanu.
On page 270 at the bottom, what can we say before you who dwell on high? What shall we plead before you enthroned beyond the stars? Are not all things known to you, both the mysteries of eternity and the dark secrets of all that live? You search the inmost chambers of the heart and probe the deep recesses of the soul. Nothing is concealed from your sight. Now may it be your will, God of all generations, to forgive all our sins, to pardon all our wrongdoings, and to blot out all our transgressions.
The sin we have committed against you under duress or by choice. The sin we have committed against you consciously or unconsciously. And the sin we have committed against you openly or in secret. The sin we have committed against you in our thoughts. The sin we have committed against you with our words. And the sin we have committed against you by the abuse of power. The sin we have committed against you by hardening our hearts. The sin we have committed against you by profaning your name. And the sin we have committed against you by disrespect for parents and teachers. The sin we have committed against you by speaking slander. The sin we have committed against you by dishonesty in our words. And the sin we have committed against you by hurting others in any way.
mechalanu, selav lanu mechalanu, kaper lanu. Please be seated. On page 278. All through the season we sing Avinu Malkeinu. It is our deepest, most heartfelt prayer to the Holy One. You'd please rise. Avinu Malkeinu, hear our prayer.
Avinu Malkeinu, pitach sha'arei shamayim litfilatenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, let the gates of heaven be open to our plea.
Avinu Malkeinu, tehei hasha'a hazot, sha'at rachamim ve'et ratzon milfanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, let this be an hour of compassion and favor.
Avinu Malkeinu, harem keren Yisrael amecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, give strength to your people Israel.
Avinu Malkeinu, aseh lema'an harugim al shem kodshecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, remember those slain for their love of your name.
Avinu Malkeinu, aseh lema'an ba'e va'esh uvamayim al kiddush shemecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, remember those who went through fire and water for your sake.
Avinu Malkeinu, aseh lema'ancha vehoshi'enu.
Avinu Malkeinu, be mindful of us and help us.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer slicha umchila.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of forgiveness.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer chayim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us for blessing in the book of life.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer geula v'yishuah.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of deliverance and redemption.
Avinu Malkeinu, chanenu v'anenu ki ein banu ma'asim. Aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed v'hoshi'enu.
Avinu Malkeinu, be gracious and answer us, for we have little merit.
Treat us generously and with kindness, and be our help.
Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu v'anenu. Please be seated. Wanted to make special note of all the people sitting on the bema tonight. These would be your past presidents and current president. We call this the Mount Rushmore service. And on behalf of everybody sitting in this synagogue tonight, we thank you for your service, for your time, for your energy, for your commitment, but most of all, for your love of this congregation. The fact you are still here, still sitting on this bema, is a testimony of really extraordinary import about what this temple means to you. You know, I must say that as I considered giving my Israel sermon, those of you that read, well, actually it doesn't matter, the New York Times, the Jewish Journal, the Wall Street, no matter what paper, leading up to, and in fact, into Rosh Hashanah, there were articles that were essentially either saying, rabbis are afraid to talk about Israel, rabbis must talk about Israel, rabbis must not talk about Israel, rabbis should struggle mightily with it. I don't know. So I struggled mightily with it. Though I must say, it never occurred to me that it was dangerous to come to you, my congregation, to talk about Israel. We've been together now for 18 years. We know each other. We get it. The sense of respect we have for each other. For what we think, for what we feel, for how we speak to each other and how we respect each other. That our temple is a place of dialogue, not of dictum. There was an article last week, I think in the Times of Israel, which is a great website, by the way, and the writer was Peter Beinart, and if any of you are readers and are consider yourselves liberal Zionists, Beinart is really one of the great voices of liberal Zionism. And a bit of a pot stirrer as well, in a really good way. And his sister just joined the temple, just full disclosure. And in an article he wrote last week, he said, rabbis shouldn't talk about Israel because, let's face it, you know, rabbis have other things to talk about, and rabbis are grade B pundits. So, okay, I was a little offended. I admit it. But I thought, well, you know, I'm not coming to you as a pundit. Though as I look at credentials, I'm not quite sure what makes someone a pundit as opposed to someone that reads a lot. I don't know. But that aside, I thought, you know what? So I sent him my sermon. I said, you know, I just... And actually, he said it was beautiful. I shouldn't say that before I give it to you. But a little chutzpahdik, actually, now that I think of it. You can judge for yourself. But all I'm trying to say really is this is not a political proclamation. This I share with you from my heart in the struggle to make meaning of what it means to be a lover of Israel and to call myself a Zionist. And I do, and I am. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. The best of times, a mild, delicious summer, filled with blue skies and good books in a bright, beautiful sun. I mean, August was, in the record books, for the perfect month in New England. And it was a dark summer, filled with a terrible murder of 3 yeshiva boys, followed by the revenge murder of a Palestinian boy, followed by the Gaza war and the resultant carnage and destruction. A summer of rising European anti-Semitism, a summer of light, a summer of darkness, a summer of joy, a summer of despair. For the 50 days of the Gaza war, I walked around with psychic pain, an existential ache. A dark cloud hovered above me. It was like the kind of pain that's perfectly described in the movie The Green Mile, where the famous Michael Clark Duncan, may he rest in peace, describes to Tom Hanks playing the guard in the jail. While he's ready to die, Coffey says, it was like pieces of glass in my head all the time. That's what those 50 days felt like. Pieces of glass in my head every day. I read about the growing anti-Semitism. I read about demonstrations in Berlin and Reykjavik, Paris, Oslo. Crowds that had gathered ostensibly to criticize Israel's conduct of the Gazan war ended up getting very ugly, turning on Jews, local Jewish institutions. People drew swastikas. They attempted to storm synagogues. In the city of Berlin, there were voices calling, "Gas the Jews." It was terrifying. I worried about the impact of social media on anti-Semites and, more importantly, on ignorant and or impressionable people who know nothing about Israel and Gaza and the struggle. Well, you might imagine my Facebook page is not exactly known for having anti-Semites on it. Friends would send me links to things they had read on Facebook, and it terrified me. It turned my stomach. I wish I hadn't looked at it. Comments about Israel, so ugly, so vitriolic, so wrong and disturbing. And yes, I worried about innocent Gazans caught in the crossfire. I particularly felt enormous compassion for Gazan children. It doesn't really matter that many were injured or killed because Hamas purposely put them in harm's way. I understand that the death of innocents is going to be an ever larger part of the madness of Islamic ideological extremism. I get that. But there's no comfort in that knowledge, only sorrow. The horror of war is always and everywhere overwhelming, because in protecting ourselves, we did kill innocent children. And of course, I especially worried about Israel and Israelis, personal friends with their children in the army, friends living on border kibbutzim, older men called up for the reserves. I worried about my friends Leah and Yoni in their beautiful 5th-floor apartment in Tel Aviv with their grandchildren because their dad was in Gaza. Whenever there was an air raid alert, grabbing their 2 grandchildren, walking down 5 flights of steps into the bomb shelter, back up when it's over, back down, and up and down and up and down. I worried about our guides that took us around Israel, the Puzzle Israel staff, all of them Army age, in the Army actively. I worried about my friend Adele, who lives on Kibbutz Nirim. Do you know where Kibbutz Nirim is? I'll tell you. Here's Kibbutz Nirim, and here's Gaza. Adele looks out her living room window. Literally, she looks out the window, and she sees Abasan al-Sa'ir, one of the first villages on the border between Israel and Gaza. So much worry. For 50 days, it was like pieces of glass in my head all the time. And after it ended, in the midst of a ceasefire now, questions emerge. I want to find lessons to learn. And I think I found some. Now, I want to clarify. I found some lessons. I did not find any answers. Answers are remarkably difficult to come by. Question: was this war necessary? Now, this may be the only simple and straightforward lesson of the Gaza war. You know who best described it? May she rest in peace, Joan Rivers. Days before her death, she was cornered by the press. They said, "Joan, so what do you think what's going on in Israel?" And I wish I could imitate that voice of hers, you know. "Let me just tell you, if New Jersey was firing rockets into New York, we would wipe them out. If we heard they were digging tunnels from New Jersey to New York, we'd get rid of Jersey." And while Joan Rivers, as usual, responded for maximum shock effect, and has always used vitriolic, over-the-top imagery, the essence of her answer was one shared by most Israelis and Jews around the world. Put differently, but really no less graphically, Amos Oz, the leading scion of modern Israeli fiction, a longtime peace activist, was going to be interviewed by the press in Germany. And he met with this interviewer who he's known for several years. And with classic Israeli chutzpah, imagine, they're sitting down, they're ready for the interview to start, and Oz says, "Wait a minute, before you ask me questions," he says to the interviewer, "I have questions for you. 2 questions." Classic Israeli chutzpah. Question number 1, he said to the German interviewer, "What would you do if your neighbor across the street sits down on his balcony, puts his little boy in his lap, and starts shooting machine gun fire into your nursery?" Question 2, "What would you do if your neighbor across the street digs a tunnel from his nursery to your nursery in order to blow up your home, or in order to kidnap your family?" Well, the interviewer was a good one. Of course, he didn't answer the question. But what other answer can there really ever be? Any sane, moral, and I use the word moral importantly here, any sane, moral person must respond to Oz, "Israel has the right to do what must be done to protect its citizens." Amos Oz and Joan, I never imagined I would say the names Amos Oz and Joan Rivers in one sentence. It's unbelievable. But they both share the essence of the truth of this battle. They share a conviction that is our conviction. Israel is a sovereign nation that will not shrink before an implacable enemy. Israel will defend itself. This is a lesson that is over 66 years old, a lesson that bears repeating loudly and with determination. Question: why must we keep repeating this notion that a sovereign state can defend itself? Since when is that a debatable point? Why is the world so ready to criticize, to ostracize the Jewish state? One lesson derived from these questions is unfortunately clear. European anti-Semitism is about 2,000 years old. Bill, did you ever take a class with Matt Green? So there was a professor at Wesley named Nathaniel Green. Taught a great. Did you take his class? Yeah. He did. Anyway, someone from Wesley must have taken it. Anybody out there? There was a Nathaniel. Okay, thank you, Todd. Nathaniel Green taught a history class, modern European history, and he was a pretty good teacher, very formal. Always wore a suit. But anyway, he said, this is a line will never leave my head. Anti-Semitism is the glue that held Europe together. It was something that joined fascists and leftists, royalists and revolutionaries, the poor and the rich. They could disagree, and they did, about everything. They fought each other all the time. But one thing brought them together: hating Jews, a fundamental of European history. And honestly, do we really think 70 years after the Holocaust that anti-Semitism just evaporates? That it's no longer in existence? That it no longer carries currency? Talk to the mother of a black teenager in this country and ask how long it takes after the trauma of slavery to really trust that the world is not an adversarial place. Why should we expect anti-Semitism to not... Why should we really be stunned? Certainly saddened. Certainly scared. But surprised? I hope not. And it's not surprising that the banner of European anti-Semitism has been taken up by, and the majority, by the way, of demonstrators, the majority of anti-Semitic incidents in Europe are perpetrated by Muslims living in Europe. But I am not a Muslim basher by any stretch of the imagination. I'm simply trying to figure out, why is it that modern anti-Semitism in Europe resonates so easily and so well with the anti-Israel rhetoric that those same young men who now live in Europe with European roots, where they learned it from the time they were infants, to hate Israel, to hate Jews. I'm not suggesting that we boycott Europe. I'm not suggesting we should become xenophobes. I'm not suggesting that Europeans are bad people. I'm suggesting that history works in strange ways, and as the wheels turn, it behooves us to be paying attention. It behooves us to remember that those beautiful, and I know many of you, including myself, have enjoyed walking the boulevards of Paris. The joy of taking a boat right on the Seine and looking up at the Eiffel Tower, one of the best, truly best European experiences. It behooves us to remember that 70 years ago, in those very beautiful streets, those same beautiful streets, Jews were rounded up and sent to their deaths. So what do we do now? Ari Shavit, who is now, I hope all of you know, in his book, My Promised Land, he is the man. He is the quintessential expert about life in Israel, the history of Israel. At first, the book was seen as a liberal Zionist cri de coeur, a cry of the heart. But as the book made its rounds in America, the truth is, it appealed to those on the left and on the right too, liberal as well as conservative Zionists. In fact, his last American tour was not sponsored by J Street. You know who it was sponsored by? By AIPAC. This is truly a guy that wears many kippots. He tells a story that is compelling because it transcends the smallness of politics. And he wrote last week in Haaretz, an Israeli newspaper, He said, if we don't divide the land, Israel, we either cease to be Jewish, cease to be democratic, or cease to be. Israel must pursue and test peace, but even in the absence of peace, it must act resolutely and wisely to end the occupation. Even though the peace camp aspired to the right goal, he says, it ignored the fact that withdrawals for the sake of peace brought us exploding buses, suicide terrorists, and rockets that reached all the way to Hadera. He says the peace movement never addressed the fact that the Palestinians effectively rejected the peace initiatives of U.S. President Bill Clinton and Prime Ministers Ehud Barak and Ehud Olmert. The peace elite still behaves as if it hasn't noticed that Iran is going nuclear, that Arab nation states are collapsing, that the Islamic State is cutting off heads. Here is the truth, he says. The emperor has no clothes. Better yet, the king is dead. Who is going to accept a peace model dating back to 1990 as reliable? Our most important national enterprise is dividing the land. Question. And this one has kept me up at night. Hope it doesn't keep you up at night. The question, clear and simple, what if there isn't a solution? How can we build any kind of permanent peace with Hamas? Their ideology spawns from the same place where Al-Qaeda comes from, Boko Haram comes from, ISIL. They're not the same thing. They're not from the same headquarters. But they carry a nihilistic ideology. It is a dark response to the West and Western liberal ideas of equality, democracy, and diversity. They despise modernity and would rather destroy than create. Radical Islam desperately seeks to retreat from the 21st century. They want to turn the future into the past. They would rather build tunnels from which to kill and kidnap Jews than build homes and hospitals. They believe that they have the right and the obligation to destroy anyone and anything that gets in their way. Jews, Christians, other Muslims. When pictures from the Gaza war were published, pictures of dead Palestinian children, my heart broke. I understood that they were offered up as a sacrifice by Hamas. For Hamas, when Israeli bombs and missiles kill children, it is a victory. It's not a cynical offering. I don't like the term human shields. I really believe they are offering up sacrifice. And they will offer up every one of their children if in doing so will get them closer to destroy us. It's an ideological statement, not cynical politics. There is no reasoning with them. How do you reason with a fundamentalist ideology that worships death? And so I really came to understand Golda Meir's conversation with Anwar Sadat in 1977 when she said to him, Anwar, we can forgive your sons for killing our sons. That's war. We cannot forgive you for forcing our sons to kill your sons. She also said, we will only have peace when the Arab people love their children more than they hate ours. There are those in Israel who call actions in the Gaza, as we saw just recently in August, they call it mowing the lawn. That is, every few years we will have to go to Gaza to beat back the enemy and then destroy them and their weapons because they are threatening the Jewish state. Feels a lot like Groundhog's Day, doesn't it? Wake up every day to the same reality with the same results. No matter what you do, it's the same thing every time. And what's the definition of crazy? You keep doing exactly the same thing, expecting different results. If we wiped out every single member, if we got a list, I'm sure there's a list we could find. We wiped out, we killed, we executed, we imprisoned every single member of Hamas. You know what would happen in 2 weeks? There'd be another organization. Because the fundamentals remain the same. And that is overwhelming. I didn't know what to do. I felt really stuck on this. What are we supposed to do now? So I called two of my friends. One writes a blog for Haaretz. The other one lives on Kibbutz Nirim. And I would ask them a straight question. So first I called my friend Brad, the reporter, the journalist, and I said, so Brad, for Yom Kippur, should I wear a Kriya ribbon? I mean, is it over? Is there any way out? Is there any possibility? Or is the game over? And he said, you know, I know this is paradoxical, but I still believe we can do this. Someone is going to realize that a two-state solution is truly our only hope. They will actually do something about it. I was incredulous. I said, Brad, so you're not pessimistic? He said, of course I am. It's just that there's no other option. My friend Brad is a classic Israeli. He's a hopeful pessimist. He's Jewish. I called Adele. Her kibbutz was the last target before the ceasefire of Hamas. They weren't firing missiles anymore. They were using mortar. Missiles they could get with Iron Dome. Mortars they could not. And so one night as she was waiting in her safe room, mortar fire slammed into the kibbutz. Her house was slashed by shrapnel. When she came out of the safe room in her house, they walked around surveying the damage. The electricity had been knocked out. The two of the stalwarts of the kibbutz, the security chief and the second in command, started climbing poles to fix the electricity. They were told it was all safe. Only it wasn't. Those two men were caught in mortar fire and died. 4 more were injured, including one who lost both of his legs. I called her up after the funerals. She's always been a very positive person, and I will gladly forward you to her Facebook page where she talks about life on a kibbutz across the border from Gaza. I expect her to be in deep despair. So I shared condolences with her. She spoke of her sadness and she cried. She said, you know, a lot of the families left the kibbutz when the war started, and some of them aren't coming back. She said, if I were in my mid-20s or my late 20s and I had a baby, I don't think I would settle here now. So I said, so Adele, when are you leaving? And you know what? She was offended by the question. I don't know that. She's, what do you mean, Leah? This is my home. This is where I live. I said, what are you going to do? You live literally a stone's throw from Gaza. This is not tenable. This is not practical. She said, since when is Zionism tenable and practical? Since when are Jews practical? Since when is the creation of the Jewish state reasonable? I said, so is a two-state solution even possible? She said, it has to be. I know people who live in Gaza. I worked with them once. I know their hearts. They know my heart. They want peace like I want peace. They are held captive in a way just like I am held captive by Hamas. I keep hoping. Unbelievable. They keep hoping. So who am I not to hope with them? As Yossi Klein Halevi wrote in the Times of Israel, he said, "We will persevere because the Jewish fanatics of the far right and far left, those who have a ready answer to all our dilemmas and who contribute each in their own way to Israel's isolation, they are a minority. Most Jews instinctively know that to be a Jew means to balance paradoxes, security and morality, realism and vision, particularism and universalism, self-defense and self-critique. This year especially, I will pray that we have the wisdom to hold together as a people despite the growing pressures on us to fragment and turn upon each other. Most of us share the same hope of a strong Israel at peace with its neighbors. We will continue to argue about the best way to achieve that. But as partners, aware that there are no easy answers, that none of us can speak for the totality of Jewish wisdom, that we need each other's insights to be a whole people. And we cannot thrive without being a whole people. I have a voice. You have a voice. Sheldon Adelson has a voice. Jeremy Ben-Ami has a voice. Morton Klein has a voice. And while we disagree about so many aspects of Israeli life and policy, here and there, all of us assert that Israel is a part of us and we are a part of Israel. So we don't sing in harmony all the time, but we all are supporters of Israel. To claim there's only one legitimate voice, an officially approved party line on how to support Israel, belies Israel's fundamental democratic underpinnings. When we fail to hear each other, we damage Israel and the strength of our people. On this evening of Yom Kippur, this holy Shabbat of all Shabbatot, God, help us to learn these lessons. Help us to develop a listening heart of compassion. Help us to see there are so many ways, legitimate ways, to love and support Israel. Dr. Jerome Groupman once said, "To hope under the most extreme circumstances is an act of defiance that permits a person to live his life on his own terms. It is part of the human spirit to endure and give a miracle a chance to happen." Hope is the elevating feeling we experience when we see in the mind's eye a path to a better future. Hope acknowledges the significant obstacles and deep pitfalls along that path. True hope has no room for delusion. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. After all that bloodshed, and all that fear, and all that suffering, dear God, help us to hope. Amen. you'll please turn to page 43 and rise for the Elenu. Debbie and Ron Fellman are our ark openers.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon HaKol, l'ten gedula liotzer Breshit, shelo asana k'boyei ha'aratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'goralenu kechol amonam. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך
מלכי המלכים,
הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
You'll please be seated. A reminder that tomorrow morning services are 8:30, then again at noon. Don't forget also, you may bring back your bags filled with food items for our two major recipients of food assistance. And a reminder that the family service is at 3. Everybody asks, when is Yizkor? It's after the afternoon service, which starts at 4. It's the best I can answer that question. When do we finish? I don't know. Whenever we get finished is when we get done. I wish I could give you the sun will be almost down. Don't worry, on your way home, you will pass Mishkan Tefillah. The cars will still be in the lot. If you're nervous about the driving, you're nervous about anything, I just wanted to clarify. Tomorrow, we're going to have the chance to hear from our president, Ellen Meisel, and we will also get a chance to hear from Steve Aronson, who will be really challenging us to step up regarding Israel, but more on that tomorrow. The back of the sanctuary is all lit up with the names of those whom death has taken in the season and years past. If you ask my friends who are very in the back, there's Lorette, if you ask Dave, you have Eric, that you can actually feel the heat coming off of those light bulbs. It's a reminder. There are names there. Names of people we loved, that we cared about, that we still love, that we still care about. And we remember them. We are grateful for who they are and who they will always be in our lives. Because tonight is Shabbat, as we always do every Friday night, we read the names of those whose yahrzeits are observed this coming week. They are Harriet Abramson, Melvin Altman, Shirley Seisler, Charles Cohen, Maxwell Cohen, Rose Cohen, Simon College, Jeffrey Drapkin, Harry Feldstein, Ida Fox, Arlene Friedman, Milton Gitlin, Adele Hellman, Rose Hankin, Jerry Klein, Mildred Lerner, Noel List, Gerald Locke, Julieta Mathiowicz, Mark Podolsky, Elizabeth Ravitz, Bernice Rosenberg, Howard Rosenberg, Samuel Sates, Myron Shapiro, Mildred Schumann, Herbert Schuster, Solomon Siegel, Gladys Solomon, Jacob Spitz, Abraham Stern, Simon Waxman, Dorothy Weinstein, Seymour Weinstein, and Norman Zamchek. The memories of all of them are with us. Memories of all of our loved ones whom we have lost are with us. And so together we rise for the mourner's Kaddish. On page 45. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah v'yalma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayedecho Beit Yisrael v'agalav v'zman kari v'imru amen Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam me'olmei olmaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei d'kudsha b'richu Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran b'yalma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'yel kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu yasei shalom, aleinu v'yel kol Yisrael v'imru amen. On this Shabbat of Shabbatot, on this Kol Nidre, this night, that begins Yom Kippur, we ask for your blessing, that you remember our loved one. You help us remember our loved ones now and forever. Amen. In just a moment, we will go out from this place. I know we always have the urge to stand and schmooze, but I want to suggest on this night of Kol Nidre that we try to leave a little extra special quietly with our sense of mission and what is ahead of us in our sights, in our focus. Shabbat Shalom. Gamar Tov. May you be written in the book of life.